Now I would like to discuss with you some common pitfalls that many presenters make. In fact, when I show you some of these, you're going to recognize them when you were in the audience in the past, in past presentations. Now, I would invite you to consider some of these pitfalls and try to avoid them if you can. Here are some examples. First, let's talk about the podium. The most common presentation style is you're going to have a stage like we're on now and a podium. Most presenters will use the podium as a crutch. It's okay to use the podium and stand behind the podium, but I recommend that you want to be casual with your presentation. You don't want to have your knuckles crunched on the back of it, and you don't want to be rigid, and you don't want to hide behind the podium. So your body language is very important. If you're uncomfortable behind the podium on the stage, the audience is going to be uncomfortable as well. So a common pitfall is presenters will freeze behind the podium and they won't move, and they'll use that podium as a protection. So what I recommend is it's okay every now and then to step out from the podium and talk to the crowd and look out to the crowd and then step back again. Be casual, be comfortable. Remember, you're having a conversation with the audience. And it's hard to have a conversation when you have this natural barrier in front of you. And when you remove that barrier and you stand out in front of an audience, then you allow yourself, you expose yourself to the audience, and now you're having that conversation. Let's talk about your PowerPoint slide. This is probably the biggest pitfall of them all. A mistake that most presenters make, as soon as they start to develop their topic, they immediately go to PowerPoint. Don't do that. Make sure you outline your presentation first. You identify those take-home messages like we talked about. And then finally, when you start to bring PowerPoint into your presentation, just remember that your PowerPoint should complement your presentation, not be your presentation. So a good acid test for this is pretty simple. If your PowerPoint went down, could you effectively still deliver your presentation? Which leads into another pitfall. Most presenters use PowerPoint as a crutch. They have to look at the next slide to know what they're going to talk about. Again, your PowerPoint should complement your presentation. Another pitfall we do with our PowerPoints, or presenters do with their PowerPoints, is they're too busy. If you have to make this statement at any time during your presentation, hey, I know you can't read this, but I like to have it up here anyway, and you're talking to your audience, then that's a mistake. If you have a PowerPoint slide that's very busy and the information is critical, then I recommend you print out that information and hand it out to your audience so they can have it as a reference. But never put busy PowerPoint slides up for the audience. It tires their eyes and it wears them out. In fact, a rule of thumb, the golden rule when it comes to PowerPoint, is you should have 1 point per slide. PowerPoints are free. You can have as many PowerPoint slides as you want. So don't put 6 or 7 points on one slide. 1 point per slide. So don't be dependent on your slides. Don't make your slides too busy, and just have 1 point per PowerPoint slide. Another common pitfall is the words that we speak, the cadence and filler words. I know that you're nervous when you get up and talk. I still get nervous today when I speak. And a mistake that we make when we're nervous is we begin to talk too fast. If we talk too fast and we speak too fast, in between the words we don't take a breath, and it's hard for the audience to understand what we're saying, kind of like what I'm doing now. Remember, you want to have a conversation with the audience. So when you're having a conversation with a friend over coffee, it's casual. Do the same thing when you're talking to your audience. You need to be very conscious and slow yourself down. It will seem almost awkward when you're on stage, but I guarantee it will sound natural when you're speaking with them. Another thing we do as presenters, a common pitfall, is we have filler words. We think that it's bad to have silence in between our phrases, and that's not. It's okay. If you need to pause, and it's very natural to, just pause. Don't put in filler words. For instance, don't get up in front of your audience and say, I'm so glad that you're here today, and I think that you're really going to enjoy my message. I've got 3 or 4 things that I think you might be interested in today. Don't do that when you're talking to your audience. Instead, take those filler words out, talk casually, be patient with yourself, and be confident within your message. For instance, just say, I'm so glad that you're here today. I have 3 things that I want to show you today that I think is going to have an impact back at your office. So let's get started with my presentation. You see the difference? So I was slower in my cadence, and I didn't have the filler words. It's small things, but those things can be distracting to your audience if you fall into that pitfall. You're going to make a mistake when you're on stage, and that's okay. You're in front of a live audience. Everybody's looking at you. You're going to stumble. You're going to forget something. Something's not going to work out. That's fine, and that's expected. What you don't want to do, and this is a great tip and a pitfall you want to avoid, what you don't want to do is apologize on stage. Because your audience may not even realize that you forgot that point, or your audience may not even take in the fact that maybe something's not going right. What you don't want to do is like, man, I really had this video I wanted to show you, and for some reason it's not loading. It's an awesome video. I wish you could see it. I'm so sorry it's not here. The audience now knows they're missing something. Don't apologize. Never apologize when you're on stage. Just go with the flow. Just anticipate there's going to be mistakes. Maybe a slide's not going to pop up. Maybe a video's not going to work, and that's fine. Just don't apologize. Another pitfall is you want to avoid political discussions on stage. And unless you're up there talking about a political issue, don't bring it up. Because again, you're trying to have a conversation with your audience. You want your audience to buy into your take-home message. Don't divide half your audience by putting in political rhetoric or maybe some kind of editorial comment about a political issue. I find you're much better off if you just avoid that altogether. When you're doing a presentation, you should always have a script or at least an outline of what you're going to talk about. Never come up on stage and think you're just going to wing it. You need to have a good idea of what you're going to speak on and have a script in hand, whether it's an outline or talking points you want to make sure you cover. On the other side of that, the other coin is never go off script. So if you come on stage and you have 5 or 6 things that you've outlined that you want to discuss, and something pops in your mind during the presentation, you think it might be a good idea to insert it here, don't do that. Never turn your back to the audience. This is awkward, even if it's just for a second. I hope that demonstrates my point. Most of the time what presenters do is they will turn their head and they will look at the slide presentation, or they want to make a point and they want to turn their back and they want to point at whatever they're showing on the screen. You don't want to turn your back to the audience if you can. The best way to do that is simply open your body up and point to the slide or point to the image, but don't turn your back to the audience. Always face the audience at all times. Never present someone else's presentation. And I've seen this happen, where maybe someone said, hey, I got a presentation coming up and I can't make it. Could you present on this topic? And they just send you their slides. That is a big mistake. Everybody has to build a presentation using your own voice. The things that I just talked to you about, some of the styles and things like that. Don't ever take someone else's presentation, someone else's slides, and try to present on that. It's best to take the time to redevelop the presentation and make it your own. Never make that mistake or have the pitfall or fall into the pitfall where you're presenting someone else's topic. I know that sometimes you've heard the tip that you want to look at the back of the wall. I wouldn't recommend that. You want to make sure that you're talking to your audience. And so what you do is you use your eyes to bring the audience in. So maybe you might want to find 1 or 2 people that you're comfortable with, and you want to look at that person and you want to present to them, and then shift your eyes to the other person across the room and present to them. But you want to look at your audience. Don't look past your audience. Make sure you relax. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Don't be rigid when you're on stage. I know that can be tough, especially if you're not used to presenting to your contemporaries and your peers. Just take a deep breath, relax, and use eye contact. Make eye contact with your audience. Don't ever fall into the pitfall where you fail to rehearse. You should rehearse at least the first 7 minutes, that golden 7 minutes, your introduction. You want to rehearse that. You want to get that down. Practice it. And I don't mean sitting at your desk and in your mind walking through your slides and thinking, hey, this is how I want to say this, this is how I want to say this. No, I want you to actually get up. I want you to actually walk around like you're presenting to an audience. Imagine people in the room looking at you as you present. You need to rehearse it exactly the way that you're going to present it. I would even go as far as, if you're going to be presenting on a screen, get a projector, maybe do it at your office there, and present it on the screen and actually go through the slides like you're presenting. But just get that first 6 or 7 minutes down. It's so important to capture the audience's attention, to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Now for me, I'm a professional. You may not do this, but for me, I practice my talks at least 10 times before I present to an audience. You need to practice at least 1 or 2 times so you're comfortable with the material, at least the first 7 minutes of your material. Your appearance is very important. You need to make sure that you dress appropriately to be on stage. Now, a good rule of thumb is it's always better to dress a little better than your audience, a little higher than your audience. So if your audience is wearing jeans, you want to wear slacks. If your audience is wearing business casual, you want to wear a sports coat. If your audience are wearing sports coats, you want to wear a tie. You want to look sharp. You want to look the part. Make sure you check yourself. Make sure you look good. Make sure your hair looks fine. You want to make sure that you take care to have the right appearance when you're presenting to your audience. And be respectful of the audience by presenting yourself in a professional manner. Now, this probably is an issue for a lot of you, but just make sure that you take care to have the right appearance. Now, I've presented a myriad of pitfalls for you to consider, and that can be overwhelming. Remember, your job is not to be a professional. I've just given you some ideas and some thoughts and some things to think about and to consider. What I would recommend is pick 1 or 2 of these pitfalls and just make sure that you're not the one that falls into them. Maybe it's your PowerPoint slides. Maybe it's not using filler words. Whatever it is, pick 1 or 2 of those and own them. But don't overdo it and don't overthink this. You're going to do fine. Just consider some of these pitfalls as you put your presentation together. I'm excited for your presentation, and I know you're going to do an outstanding job. My job is done here. Now it's your turn. The stage is all yours.